Welcome to Conversations with the Rarest of the Rare. My name is Carolyn Tordella, and I'm the Director of Communications at the LRG. This webinar is the Life Raft Group's presentation in honor of Rare Disease Day. Rare Disease Day is an observance held on the last day of February to raise awareness for rare diseases and to help improve access to treatment and medical care. Since its establishment in 2008, Rare Disease Day has been observed every year in more than 40 countries around the world. Currently, there are over 7,000 rare diseases that impact over 300 million people globally. And in the United States, these rare diseases affect over 25 million people. That's close to 1 in 10. GIST, or gastrointestinal stromal tumor, is one of those rare cancers. Arising primarily within the gastrointestinal tract, it is a very rare sarcoma, making up approximately 1% of all gastrointestinal tumors. Each year, about 4,000 to 6,000 people in the United States are diagnosed with GIST. GIST is not just one disease, however. There are rare subsets of GIST that have been discovered as more sophisticated ways of identifying driver mutations have been developed. We continue to advocate for all GIST patients to receive mutational testing to assure they receive an accurate diagnosis and access to the most effective treatment for their mutation. The Life Raft Group is honored to host this conversation today with two patients, Karen and Jill, who have graciously agreed to share their rare stories. Sahibjeet Kaur, our Director of Data Management and Research, is here today to facilitate that conversation. Sahibjeet?
Thank you, Carol. It is my pleasure to introduce our two participants today. Karen, who is a PDGFRA exon 18 D842V mutation patient, and Jill, who is an NTRK patient. Karen, why don't we start with you? Can you let us know when you were first diagnosed with GIST?
Yes, actually, it was almost exactly 5 years ago, February 1st, 2017. I had surgery for a tumor that had been found during an MRI. And afterward, I found out that it was GIST. The interesting part was that I was anxious to go to an oncologist and find out what I had to do. The surgeon was a surgical oncologist, but of course I needed a medical oncologist. Unfortunately, in my haste to see someone and not the person in the group that I would have chosen, I went to an oncologist who sort of seemed to only know one word when it came to GIST, and that was Gleevec. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to start you on Gleevec. To cut to the chase, it didn't feel right. And fortunately, having worked in healthcare for many years and having had a dear friend who was a surgeon and whose byline was get a second opinion, I found a GIST specialist through Life Raft and went to see him. I think at that point I was 2 hours from starting Gleevec, and Dr. Mackey said, why are you going on Gleevec? You're an exon 18. It won't help. At that time, there were 2 clinical trials, one with Blueprint Labs and one with Decipher for exon 18. Actually, Blueprint, as you probably know, was completely approved last July and is being given as Avakit is now the name. And that was how I found out that I was a rare subset of a rare disease.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing that. Did you experience any symptoms when you were first diagnosed with GIST or leading up to the diagnosis?
Actually, I had a very mild symptom that occasionally when I got up in the morning, I had this slight pain on the side of my stomach. And only if I was home and, grazing in my own kitchen late at night wanting to eat something. I noticed when I was out of town, it didn't happen. But fortunately, I had changed internists, and the internist I went to said, that's not right. We need to find out what this is. So I was really fortunate because I had told my previous internist, and she didn't put any importance to it.
Got it. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Joe, can you also share, how you were first diagnosed, any events that led up to that diagnosis?
Yes, I was diagnosed September of 2020. I went to my annual physical, which I guess I had been a little over a year because of COVID. It had been pushed back, and doctor realized something wasn't quite right and ordered an ultrasound, and the mass was found then, and which led to CT scans and MRI scans, and still wasn't conclusive. But I had the endoscopic ultrasound, and they found, did the biopsy and confirmed GIST at that point. And I had surgery 2 weeks later. They kind of got me in pretty quickly, and the GIST tumor was removed completely with clear margins, which was great. And it was, I guess, a little on the larger side, like 6 centimeters. So, but it was still considered low grade. And I knew I needed to see a GIST specialist at that point, and maybe I should have had one earlier, but everything happened so quickly at the time. And I had found the Life Raft group in between finding out it was a GIST then, and looked up, went through the directory and found a specialist. And I think I spoke to somebody at Life Raft group also to kind of help me to get what I needed. And so that was a big help. And yeah, so I went to Mayo Clinic, and one of the specialists there, and now on that journey. So
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jill. And I know, Karen, you also had mentioned, similar to Jill, that you guys utilized our GIST specialist database within the Life Raft Group's website to kind of find a specialist. So we are happy that you're able to have that. We always encourage all GISTers to have their care under a GIST specialist. So Karen, I know you had mentioned mutational testing. At what point could you let us know? Was it right after you were diagnosed with your GIST that you had mutational testing done? Was it a little after, once you saw a specialist?
Yeah, I was actually very fortunate because it turned out that the hospital that where I had my surgery immediately processed that. In fact, I had questioned my surgeon because of this mix-up, with the oncologist who didn't know anything about GIST. And I was lucky. I had a friend who worked in rare diseases for many years. And she gave me a phone number at Nord, who immediately gave me the Life Raft phone number. Don't call them immediately. So I was very fortunate. And because of that, a few weeks after my surgery, I had my mutational information. And now, of course, I learned how important that is.
Wonderful. And Jill, for you as well, how did, at what point did you have mutational testing done? Was it once right after you were diagnosed?
Went to the GIST specialist, oncologist in the sarcoma unit. We discussed mutational testing at my first visit, and he briefly talked about Gleevec, and then we decided to wait until after the testing. And that first round of testing where it was negative for the KIT and the PDGRFA, if I think that's right, then went for further testing to find out. Yeah. And then, so thankful that we did that.
Do you have to request mutational testing from your doctor, or once you saw the specialist, they did it right away without you having to request it?
I don't really remember. It seems like, I maybe brought it up, and he thought it was a great idea. That's how I kind of remember it, and that was his thoughts as well.
Karen, I know since at first you were about to go on Gleevec, and then, once seeing a specialist, they realized that the Gleevec with your mutation, it wouldn't show any type of response. Did your doctor or your GIST specialist further explain the results of your test and the reasoning as to why you shouldn't be taking Gleevec, or did he kind of just say it's not going to respond and that's it?
No, no, no. We absolutely had a significant conversation. I mean, I was, as I said, very fortunate in terms of who I went to. I mean, my margins had been clear also. My tumor was encapsulated. So I was like, feeling somewhat relaxed about that. But no one, what he handed me, Dr. Mackey is interesting. He handed me the report, a copy of it. He had his copy in his hand, and he said, let's go over this together. And so, I got all of the important information right then and there, which has left me feeling very disturbed for people who do not see a GIST specialist, and I'm sensing Jill might agree with me on this one, because it changes everything.
Jill, do you have anything to add in terms of that? I know for your mutation, it's also a very rare submutation within GIST.
Yeah, in fact, my oncologist, if I remember right, said he hasn't had a patient with this mutation before. And he said, yeah, you're kind of writing the book on this one. And I know there's other people that have it, but just where the location and everything. And so, yeah. But he actually called me with the results. It was 2 days before Christmas when the test results came back, and said, yeah, there is not a drug to prevent, but there's 2 approved drugs for recurrent or metastatic disease. So yeah, just got to stay on top of it now, I guess. And
absolutely. And again, going back to the treatments, one of something I'd like to talk about is how the results of the mutational testing has changed the outcome of the treatment plan. I know, Karen, for you, especially given your PDGFRA D842V mutation, Gleevec wouldn't show any type of response. So tell us how that had changed the outcome of the treatment and what you're doing now in terms of any medications.
Well, yes, it made a big difference. I'm not on any medication. I was having an MRI every 6 months. And the reason not a PET scan, because I know a lot of people do that, but it was because of an allergy that I had. So, but I've been moved up as of 2 years ago, actually, because now I just passed 5 years, to an annual MRI. And that's basically it. I mean, that's, unless every now and then, 1 year or something, I was feeling uncomfortable, I wasn't feeling completely right. And so my doctor moved up the MRI. But right now the standard is an MRI once a year. And you don't go, and I think this is true of everybody, without any other symptoms, you don't go on Everkit, which is good for various reasons. So, but I know it's there. And that's a big change from 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always nice to know that, in case anything does change in the future for your GIST journey, that there is a medication there that you can turn to. And it's definitely important to always discuss these things with your doctor, given that everyone's GIST journey is always so different, even if the mutations are the same. Jill, I know for you as well, you had mentioned you haven't been on any medication for your mutation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a relief not having to be on a medication when I hear about, so many other people suffer with side effects, and I mean, would be probably, a big change. And then, with the cost savings as well. And so, yeah, we're just, right now I'm going every 4 months for CT scans, and maybe MRI. He's trying to figure out what direction and that will be, but yeah. And then maybe it'll be 2 years this September, and then so maybe they'll lengthen the time between scans. I'm not sure, but
Absolutely, and that's definitely something to keep as a conversation piece with their doctor to see how
Mhm.
often to get those. So Jill, one of our last questions is, what advice would you give to someone who's newly diagnosed with GIST?
Yeah, definitely find the specialist, a GIST specialist, and I think mutational testing is a must. I mean, why not find out for sure, what medications work best for your mutation?
Absolutely. Karen, would you like to also mention what type of advice you would like to give to anyone who's newly diagnosed with GIST?
Well, yes, I absolutely agree with Jill. Um, it's really, I mean, it's really, really important to go and see a GIST specialist, to have your mutational testing, because there are various meds now, and you would not want to take something that isn't going to help you if there is an option to obviously take something that is. Also, I think it's different when you see a GIST specialist, and I've shared this with several of the gals I've spoken with. I'm not the only one who had that kind of near miss experience, let's put it that way. But I've heard of people whose doctors, whose oncologists said, well, why don't we start you on Gleevec and then we'll see what happens. I'm thinking, my God, why would you want to do that? Aside from the money, I mean, yeah, it's your body. But so I think that that is really my absolute top advice. Go to GIST specialist. I've heard of 1 or 2 people who live in an area where there isn't a GIST specialist, but where their oncologist is now working in tandem with a GIST specialist in somewhere like either the Mayo Clinic or Sloan Kettering, or, and there are ways. We're very fortunate. We have the internet, we have a lot of technical assistance in taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's wonderful advice. Thank you, Jill and Karen. So before we conclude, is there anything else that you would like to share, Jill and Karen? Any comments or anything else that you think would be helpful for anyone listening to this?
Yeah, I think the Life Raft group is such a wonderful resource. I mean, there's so much information on the website, videos you can watch, and it was so helpful early on in my after diagnosis, and I've referred to it now and then again to follow up on things. So I really appreciate that. And so anybody newly diagnosed, I think it's a wonderful resource.
Great. Would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I agree totally. It has been so helpful, and we're so fortunate to have Life Raft. And even in the 5 years that I've been on this journey, there have been times, as I said, that people had a similar experience to mine. But there are also times when somebody will talk about something and you realize, gee, I know someone through Life Raft who had a similar experience. Again, a way of putting people together whose journey, because it is so different to begin with, is easier. I mean, one gal said to me, I know I can talk to you because whatever I say, you've heard, you've experienced, that feeling of not being alone in this rare situation. And it really helps. I don't think there's any question about that, It's a club we didn't want to belong to, but I'm so glad it's here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, it's always something that we share with many, many members and patients that are part of our Life Raft group community. And, we're glad and happy to know that you had a pleasant experience with our organization and our resources thus far. So, in conclusion, we would love to thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us today. As you can see from Karen and Jill's stories, having mutational testing is critical to an accurate diagnosis and for effective treatment. The Life Raft Group is currently co-sponsoring a tissue testing initiative with Bayer Pharmaceuticals and Tempest Laboratories to provide free tissue testing, next generation tissue testing for qualified patients. And for anyone who's watching this and would like for more information, please do reach out to our data management and research department for further information. We will definitely have all of that contact information listed for your convenience.
Thank you so much, Karen and Jill, for sharing today. Your words are going to have a great impact on our gisters. We know how much they love hearing and gain so much from all that's shared. To our audience, if you need more information on mutational testing, please visit our website where you can access our patient resource toolkit. It's got lots of materials for the newly diagnosed patient, GIST facts, educational videos, and articles on how to cope with GIST. You can visit liferaftgroup.org, choose Get Support from the top menu, and you'll see the patient resource toolkit. The links to all the resources that Zebby and I have shared will be in the comments below. Thank you so much for taking time to join us on Rare Disease Day 2022.